Hello. This is LaFrancis. I wanted to give you a couple of nuggets and some things that I learned last night while in Bible study at St. Luke Baptist Church with Elder Sheree Evans, who is our executive pastor of ministries at St. Luke. So last night, she talked to us in depth about the story of Sarah and Abraham and how Sarah, because it was a women's night, and she had all the power, being the wife of a very wealthy man. And in her mind, she decided that because she was barren, that she would allow her husband to sleep with her handmaiden or her slave. So I got to thinking about that, and I got to wondering, how old was she? How old was Sarah? How old did she know she was barren? How many opportunities did she have to try other methods? But what other methods even available back in the day like that, So, and I'm sure they were not. There wasn't in vitro. There wasn't foster care or adoption. I don't believe any of those things were available. But I know that she was 75 years old. 75 years old. I can't imagine wanting something for so long that I would do anything to get it. Well, that's how Sarah was. And the Sarah is before the Lord changed their name. And that's a whole nother story. So I'll try to keep saying Sarah, but her name is Sarah. But just think about it. Imagine wanting something so long. I like ice cream, but only certain types of ice cream. I like this flurry kind of thing you get from TCBY, but I don't get it often. But every now and then I want it. And I say I'll go maybe 3 or 4 years and I want it and I want it. And I'm either on a diet or on something that I can't have ice cream and I can't have it. And that'll bother me. But can you imagine having an issue where you can't just pull into a driveway or drive through and get it when you want it in 2 and 3 days? No, she was barren and had been barren for 75 whole years. And she was married to a wealthy man. That meant her status was dependent on her giving him children, right? So she decided in her sweet baby's mind that she would allow her husband to sleep with her handmaiden, her slave. And the Bible tells us that as I researched, it said that the maids were anywhere between, childbearing age. So that could have been anywhere from 12 to 20 years old, because they had no use for them if they were not childbearing age and if they were too old. So Sarah was 75 and this pretty young thing was about 20. Let's say that. And in her mind, the only way to keep her status, to feel her ache, because that's an ache when you can't give your husband what he wants and needs, and then what you want and need. That's an ache in your heart. So she sends her husband into this bed chambers with her slave girl, who was, I'm sure, bouncing and didn't have any idea. I'm sure Hagar didn't set out to do this. She didn't have a choice, as Elder so eloquently shared with us last night. She didn't even have a choice in the matter. But I'm sure she wasn't just going around saying, "Oh, I want to sleep with this 80-some-year-old man." I'm real sure she wasn't saying that, right? So imagine that, having to sleep with an old man and then get pregnant by an old man, and then have the old woman mad. But I didn't have any choice in it. So I got on today. I wanted to talk to you about the desperation that as a woman, and sometimes we have, that we're so desperate to make things happen, and so desperate that we fail to wait on God and in God's timing, that we fail to just be sure and rest in what he says he's going to do for us. And so I wanted to reiterate the points that Elder Sheree gave us last night as she spoke about Sarah and Hagar. So let me pull those up so that I can share those with you, because it'll bless you. And I'm going to ask you to go and find the chapters. We were in Genesis chapter 16. And all of that from 16 to, I believe, 19, chapter 19. and beyond. It talks about this relationship between these women and the different things they had to endure. But let's not be so desperate that we forget that God always has our backs. Even when we don't think, even when we're just at our wits' end, it's not over. Okay? So, helpful tips from Hagar is what Elder Sheree titled her lesson on last night. So the first promise, or the first tip she gave us, was to remember God's promises. Remember God's promises. The second one was rely on God's plan. And the third one was recognize God's provision. And the fourth one was rest in God's presence. Rest in God's presence. That right there is what sealed it for me. Is the presence of God, where the fullness of joy resides. If we learn to rest in his presence, oh my God, what a great place and opportunity it is for us to learn that no matter what our struggles are, no matter what we're enduring and what we're going through, get in the presence of the Lord. Get in the presence of the Lord and remember the tools and the tips that God is giving you through all of these ministers, through pastors, Pastor Alexander, Elder Sheree, and anybody you talk to that has the Spirit of the Lord that can speak into your life. Because it's not just those on the pulpit. I can tell you, anybody can speak into your life that's anointed by God and God gives a word to. And so be open to receive that word. Walk in discernment and be open to receive that word. But again, those 4 steps or 4 tips that Elder gave us last night. The first one was remember God's promises, rely on God's plan, recognize God's provision, and then rest in God's presence. Rest in God's presence. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys. And I want you to know that God got your back. He has you even when you can't have yourself. Be blessed.